Always for hosting us, and Chartio for sponsoring tonight. So next event will probably be in October, not scheduled yet. Obviously, Dreamforce is coming up next month. Basically, before I introduce Matt, my name is David. I make an app called Chartio for Salesforce. That's a payment processing app, plugs into Salesforce, integrates with all the different payment gateways. So if you ever need billing, talk to me. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Matt Train, who's a senior solutions architect.
Just senior at this point.
Senior, all right.
It's just an age thing now.
For Chartio. Pretty excited to check out what they've been up to recently.
All right, thank you. So that's it. We just jump straight into it like that?
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Thanks for having me. So I'm with Chartio. I'm our director of pre-sales. It's a fairly new title for me. I'm directing myself at this point, so I'm not really director of, I don't even know what that means right now. We've got a whole contingent of Chartio folks back over here. We've got some marketing folks. We've got a bunch of sales folks. So feel free to talk to the. That's us. They're all nice folks. Our founder Dave was here a little while ago. Is he gone now? Dave's gone. All right. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of a presentation on Chartio. I think we've got 30 minutes. Is that correct, David?
Yeah.
30 minutes? All right, 30 minutes or so. Probably less than that. I'll talk fast, generally do. So Chartio, I guess we'll tell you a little bit about Chartio. So I've been with Chartio now for about 5 months. And I'm going to try not to move my laptop around because it keeps doing that. I've actually been in the BI space, business analytics, business intelligence space for 17 years now, which is hard to say. A lot longer than I realized I was going to be doing this kind of stuff. And I worked originally for a company called Cognos. Some of you might have heard of Cognos. They ultimately got bought by IBM. And then I was with another company here in town up until just recently, and came over to Chartio. Chartio is kind of, I think of Chartio personally as sort of a second generation cloud business intelligence platform. We were born in the cloud essentially. It was made. We were made specifically to run in the cloud. We weren't sort of an on-premise thing that got kind of pushed into the cloud or anything like that. Obviously we're based around business intelligence, business analytics, and it's a platform. I like to think of it as being a platform that is, it's built for the common business user. I've worked with enough BI tools, and this thing's going to give me grief all night, isn't it? I've worked with enough BI tools now that you kind of have this mix of super powerful BI tools that do some really crazy, incredible stuff. And there's like 5 people in the world that actually know how to make it work. And then you've got the other side of that where you've got things that are so simplistic that lots of people can make them work, but you can't really do anything with them. Chartio is kind of a nice mix, nice balance of being able to do some really powerful stuff, but do it in a pretty easy way. And I'm going to show some of that here today. Obviously, you guys are focused on Salesforce. So I'm going to focus mostly on Salesforce. I built out a dashboard today around that, and it's kind of a, hopefully you won't laugh too much at my fake data and such coming out of Salesforce, but I think you'll get the point as we walk through it. Analytics, the great thing about analytics and the challenge, so I've been, personally have been exposed to Salesforce now for about 5 years from a business intelligence perspective. And it's always interesting to talk to people that use Salesforce, the platform, because it's so difficult to do. You've got basic reporting that comes out of it, and then sort of doing anything beyond the basic reporting gets to be really tricky because of the number of objects you can go across and such. So generally, you wind up having to pull data out and do the analytics somewhere else. And then the other piece of that is trying to marry in some other data. So whether you've got leads coming out of Marketo or you've got Google Analytics or something like that, it's always a big challenge to try to do the analytics together with that. And this is something that our marketing guy Jordan over there put together for me. And I'm going to completely chop up all the words that he told me to say here. But basically the idea, though, is being able to get a 360-degree view of your business for a sales rep, right? So being able to see from a leads perspective all the way through the opportunities closing and all the way through what's happening with your current customers in the post-sales process to ultimately do some more upsells and such. And Chartio is going to allow you to do that. What's interesting, the way we do this is we have the ability to connect to a lot of different data sources. So a lot of different cloud sources, on-premise relational sources. We're able to connect to all of those. I'm going to talk a little bit here in a minute just about Heroku Connect, and you'll see a little bit about that here in a second. But basically the idea with Chartio is we're able to connect to a lot of different data sources. We're able to connect to data warehouses, and non-data warehouses. So you don't necessarily have to go out and build a data warehouse just to make this work. You can also just connect to operational sources and report off of those if you'd like to as well. We can also go against CSV files, just a lot of common sources. We do have a partnership with Heroku for Heroku Connect. Is anybody familiar with that? It's kind of new to me, that's why I'm asking. A couple of people, one of our sales guys is familiar with it. Thanks, Dante. So Heroku Connect is something that allows you basically to connect to Salesforce and move the data from Salesforce into Heroku, so into a Postgres database. The challenge with Salesforce, the challenge with all these really fantastic web interface, cloud interface applications that are all the rage of the moment, and obviously Salesforce is the biggest of them all. The challenge with those is being able to do reporting and analytics off of it. You just can't connect up to the APIs and try to do all of this really sophisticated analytics. It just doesn't work that way. You still have to use relational data sources. I know Salesforce has Wave out, and I haven't really heard a lot good or bad about Wave, so maybe I don't know if anybody uses it here or not. But generally, you mostly have to do this stuff out of relational databases. And I know relational databases have been around for, 30 years now, but they're still sort of the best way of being able to do analytics. And so with Heroku Connect, we're able to basically extract the data out of your Salesforce instance and put it into Heroku. It's very near real time, so you're going to see here in just a second, I've got an instance of it running where we're basically polling the objects every 5 minutes. So it's very, very near real time. So what's great about that is a lot of times when you have to build a data warehouse, you generally do like a once a day extract, and somebody makes some changes at the end of the month, and then you've got to wait until the next day, or you've got to run the thing for 3 hours. It's very near real time with using Heroku Connect. We basically have a partnership with Heroku, so we're basically a reseller. Is that the correct way of saying it? So we're basically a reseller of it. And we actually use it internally as well. So let me get in and start doing some demos. I'm gonna run through just a couple of examples of what we do. I'll show you how we do some of this stuff. The first place I'm going to start, though, is in Heroku, just so you guys can see how this works. So, and I'm actually still, like I said, I'm still fairly new to Heroku, so I'm going to stumble around in here just a little bit. So this is actually Heroku Connect, and Heroku Connect it's basically a plugin into Heroku. And in this case, what we've done is we've actually connected to a Salesforce instance, and you can see as I scroll down here all of the different objects that we've connected to. And so what's happening is we're literally moving all of the data from all of the objects out into Heroku. What's really cool about Heroku Connect, though, is you can actually write data into the Postgres database and have it copied back over into Salesforce. I'm guessing with the developers here, you guys probably go, there's some interesting implications to that. I don't know what they are. Not really my concern, frankly. But for us, it's cool because you can get your data out of Salesforce, and it makes it very easy to report, be able to report off of it from a relational database. We do have a direct Salesforce connection for that. You do write SOQL. I don't think anybody love writing SOQL? Olga does. Nobody else. Olga's the smart one in the group, apparently.
I'm not. I just went through the exercise of Herokus, Digender, SOQL, Schmoqls, you name it.
It's not fun. But literally, you can see it out there polling right now. If you watch the status here, it's literally going through here and polling, and it's looking for new entries into Salesforce. And as it finds those, it's copying those into that relational database, which means that we can then run queries off of that as well. So once you've gotten the data into a relational database, then at that point, Chartio can go ahead and attach to it and start to basically do some mapping of those objects, and then start to report off of it as well. So I'm going to jump over into Chartio and show you what that looks like now as well. And by the way, I know I do have some objects in here. We can always easily go in here and actually add new objects. So I can basically go in there and create additional mappings to additional objects as they come in. So if I jump over into Chartio, and this is Chartio, when I jump over into Chartio, I'm back in our administrative area now, and I'm just going to walk through the process of what it's like to actually map in data sources. You can see that I've got several data sources already mapped in there. So I've got some Amazon Redshift, I've got a forecast, an Excel forecast in there. You can see I've got something there that says DigiSign GA, which stands for Google Analytics. So I'm connected to a live Google Analytics instance. And then I also have several additional databases that I'm also connected to. If I go ahead and click on Salesforce, this is where I've actually now, once I've moved that data into Postgres and that Heroku database, this is now where I actually go in and connect to that database. And when we do that, Chartio goes out and essentially reflects the schema. We basically go out there and read the schema, and we bring it all in. You bring the tables in, It reads the columns and everything. And so as I scroll down through here, you'll notice, for instance, I've got an opportunity object in here. And if I open up that opportunity object, you can see all of the standard fields and all of the custom fields that are in that object. You can see that we've mapped in things like what the data type is. You'll also know that there's this thing, notice in here, there's this thing called foreign key, which basically allows me to define the joins to the other objects. What's great about this is you're not locked into a specific join. You can do whatever joins you want to. So it's not like you're locked in kind of the way you are when you're doing SOCL or when you're writing reports and such as well. We also break things up by dimensions and measures. So measures are, if you don't know this, are anything that's additive, anything that you can sort of measure, obviously, and then dimensions are anything that's sort of descriptive of the business. So things like amount in your opportunity object, that's kind of an obvious thing that you're going to want to measure, whereas let's say an opportunity name, that's going to be a dimension. And you can change these up if you want to. We don't always get that right when we import it and such. And when you're finished doing all the mapping, you ultimately wind up with something that visualizes, and this is kind of a funky resolution, so let me see if I can zoom in, there we go. So if I zoom in, you can actually see the tables, and you can see where I've done all of the joins between these. This is just a nice visual way of being able to see how all of this stuff joins together. So I've done this for all of the databases that I have, and as I've said, you can bring in data warehouses. Anybody that's done any kind of data warehousing knows that data warehouses take a long time to get up and running. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I worked for a company that did data warehousing previously, and it takes a long time to implement it. Afterwards, you have something really cool, but then by that time the business has changed and everybody's moved on and all that stuff. So it's so this is great because it just gets you up and going very quickly, and you'll see that here in just a second. But again, I've got all these other data sources mapped in as well. So from here, we actually I'm going to jump into showing myself building out a few things and show you what it's like to actually connect to a couple of different data sources and build out some cool dashboards and things like that. There is a Q&A at the end, but before I get past this point, any questions so far about Heroku Connect, about mapping in data? Are we all getting this? Is this making sense so far, hopefully? Not talking over anybody's head, hopefully. I'm not that smart, so I shouldn't be. So, all right, perfect. If I was smart, I'd actually be writing code rather than just doing this database stuff. So let's actually jump into Chartio itself. And here's a quick example of a dashboard in Chartio. I built this today. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I've known about doing this for about a month and a half now, and I just today built this thing. So shame on me for not working on it sooner than this, but here it is. Pretty easy to build out. Pretty cool stuff, pretty easy to build out. And you'll see me work through a couple of things, and I'll show you actually how the flow works with it and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and jump in and do some building. So I'm going to jump into our exploration mode in Chartio. And this brings us to a screen where you can see over here on the left-hand side basically the databases that I'm able to connect to. And then you're going to actually see how things get built over here on the right-hand side, how it looks once we build it in. You'll notice all of those data sources that I had access to are over here on the left-hand side. So things, again, the Excel files, the Google Analytics, and then again, some of those Postgres databases and Redshift as well. So let's start out with that Salesforce instance. And I'm going to use a cheat sheet here. So I've got this really nice little flow that if I don't use my cheat sheet now, I'm going to mess it all up. So let's go ahead and build this out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my opportunities object. You can see that I've got things like amount, I've got account IDs. I just want to do just a view of my current opportunities. So I just want to know the number of current opportunities that I have. So I just very simply dragged up my current opportunities and dragged it up there. If I refresh the chart, and actually this is all of my opportunities that are actually in the database. I don't know if you can read that or not, but it basically says 1,794 opportunities. And this is just a sample database. So, but I do want to look at what my current opportunities are. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find my is closed field, and I'm going to set that to false. And so when I do that, it's now going to show me, should show me 32, there it is. So we've got a number 32 up there. Now for this dashboard, I just very simply want to add a KPI out there, and I'm just going to use that as one of my KPIs. So you can see at the bottom down here that we've got a list of items that we can switch through. So I can do a bullet chart if I want to do that. We can do box plots if we want to as well. You'll also notice that some of these charts are grayed out, and the reason for that is because we only have a single column in there, so it doesn't make sense to try to do like a bar chart, for instance. Let's go ahead and click on the single value, which basically gives me a KPI, and then I can just very simply go into my chart settings, and we'll just call this current opportunities. can change font sizes, I can add drill downs to this. I'm going to leave that as is, and I'm going to save that to my dashboard. So now it's asking me, well, where do you actually want to save this to? And I'm just going to create a new dashboard, and we'll call this SFDC Meetup, and I know that's not the official name of this meeting, but that's what we'll call it. And we'll just call it, we'll put this into our sales category. We've got the categories over here for this as well. And so we've got a brand new dashboard, and we've got the number of opportunities created out there. And I'll just drag this around so you can see that we're in sort of an interactive mode, and what we call a range mode. And I can just sort of move this KPI around and drop it anywhere I want to. And then I'll take it out of a range mode, and I now have my first chart of it. So simple stuff. So let's go ahead and go beyond that, though. Let's build some things like, well, maybe we want to see the total amounts versus the number of opportunities and things like that. So I can take this chart, and I can clone it. And we'll just pull this down here. And I'm going to leverage some of the business logic that I've already put in. We'll change it around a little bit as well. And I'm going to go ahead and let's edit the chart data. And so once I'm back in here again, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the is closed is false. And what I actually want to do is I want to bring in is one is true. So we've actually won a deal. We want to see where we've actually won deals. So we want it to be is true. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to add in some time because I want to see how this flows over time. So if I refresh it now, we'll see the number of deals that we've won over time, which has been 393. And then if I go to the close date, which is right here, I'll just very simply drag and drop that into my dimensions. And I'm going to flip this back to being a table, and then I'll refresh that chart. And so now you can see all of the close dates on there. And if I wanted to, I could also do a bar chart. It's a bit of a busy bar chart. So rather than showing it at the day level, we can also go in and actually change the time bucket. So we can bump this up to be in the month level. And I'll refresh that chart. So we can see now over time, every single one of the months that we've had, where we've closed at and such. And so these are still the number of opportunities that we've closed. I also may want to bring in the amounts as well. So we'll drag and drop the amounts in there. And it's going to give us a stacked bar chart. So what I probably want to do, though, because those are both sort of out of range of each other, is we'll switch this over to a bar line chart, and you can see that it basically now has a double y-axis. And at this point, I can very simply take this, and I can save that chart back to the dashboard. So pretty cool so far. Let's go back into a range mode here. I'll just sort of widen that thing out. So nice chart so far. So we've done some pretty easy stuff thus far. And as I said, we can basically, let's say, mash up data together. So I'm going to actually go in and we'll show some leads along with some Google Analytics in there as well, so we can actually see how people are hitting our website as well as the leads that are coming in. So we'll take that out of a range mode, and I'm going to add one more element, and we'll add a chart to this. And again, I've got my Salesforce data, and I've got my Google Analytics data. So I'm going to start out where I'm at with my Salesforce data, and we'll go into our leads. And I've got a lead ID, and we'll just drag and drop that in here. And then I'm just going to use the created date for this as well. And I'll drop that into my dimensions. And again, let's change this to the month level because it's just going to be a little bit overwhelming to see this at the day level. So these are the number of leads that we've had over time. And again, if I turn this into a bar chart, you'll get a good view of those leads over time. Now what I've done so far is I've done some very basic queries, but one thing I'll point out is I do have the ability to go down here and add a step, and you're going to see me do that here in just a minute. So adding a step basically takes us into this thing called the data pipeline. So if you've ever worked with data, you normally will bring a query in, and then you'll go, oh yeah, I need to do one more thing to that data. And you do that, and you go, oh yeah, I need to do one more thing to that data. So the data pipeline does that. It lets you bring in your data, and then it lets you do that one more thing, and then that one more thing. It lets you add a calculation to it. It lets you do additional transformations to it. If you've ever done anything with ETL, you can almost think of it like that, where you're sort of stepping through processes to process data. But we've done it here at the sort of at the end, sort of the last mile, if you will, for your business users. We've made it very easy for business users to go through that process of doing their analytics and doing some of those sophisticated calculations, but a step at a time, at a piece at a time. So it's not really difficult of trying to build up a really complicated query. So we'll do that in just a second. And then the other thing I'll point out is this thing up here. This is layer 1. So far I've only used single layers. And a layer for us is, you can think of it as a query. So I'm going to add a second layer in. And my second layer basically now creates a new query for me. And when I do that, it allows me to switch over to different databases. So if I switch over to Google Analytics, I can now go in here and I can grab, well, let's look at the number of sessions that we've had from Google Analytics. So I'll grab time, and I'll throw that into my dimensions, and then I'm going to do the count of sessions, and we'll throw that into my measures, and I'm going to switch the time bucket here as well to the month. So 2 queries, 2 different data sources. Generally, you'd have to move all of this stuff into a single data warehouse, into a single spot to run these queries and sort of bring it all together. Chartio, in this case, is actually acting as the middle layer, and it's actually bringing that data in, and it's going to join it together here. So when I refresh the chart now, you're going to notice that, wow, we've got a whole bunch of yellow here. Where did all the blue go? Well, the blue is kind of in the bottom corner here. But our Google Analytics data actually goes all the way back to 2010. So I kind of need to get the data lined up, because what's happening here is we're actually doing what's called a full outer join of the data, which means that where it can join up, it is joining up, but where it can't, it's still bringing it in. So you've still basically got maybe some Google Analytics data where there's no leads, and because the leads only go back to 2013. So as I mentioned, we've got this whole data pipeline thing down here below, and I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but there's this thing that says outer join in the merge type. So we're basically, by default, we're setting up a merge between those 2 sets of data, and by default, we're doing an outer join. Now, if I wanted to, I can do a union of that data, I can left outer join it, I can inner join it, I can cross join it. I'm going to do an inner join, though, and I'm going to join on the first column in the dimension. So basically, we're using those dates. You can have additional columns in the dimensions you can also join on, but we'll go ahead and just join on those 2, and we'll refresh the chart. It happens automatically there. And so we can see all of our Google Analytics data. But again, our leads, we have way fewer leads than we actually have Google Analytics or sessions on our website. So again, I'll switch this over to a bar line chart so we can see this. So a lot of times when we do something like this, then the question becomes, well, can we do some sort of a calculation between these 2? It's a question I get quite a bit. What if I want to do a calculation, some sort of a ratio between these 2? So the answer is absolutely yes. So if I now go and add a step, few things I can do in here. So one thing I can do is, what if I want to predict where my leads are going, right? So I'm going to click this thing that says extrapolate data, and I'm going to choose my leads, and I'm going to extrapolate it out over, let's say, 6 months. So we're just doing sort of a linear statistical calculation. I can tell it to create a new column, or I can just keep using the column that it's doing there. And now you're going to see basically this statistical calculation of where, based on statistics, where the leads are going, which direction they're going in. So that's kind of a nice, kind of a nifty little thing to be able to do there. But instead of doing that, let's go ahead and add a step here, and let's go ahead and add a column. And the column that we're going to add is just going to be a basic calculation. I'm not going to do anything fancy here. You can do a custom formula. There's a bunch of other things that we can do as well when you're doing custom columns, so things like being able to aggregate moving averages, running totals, things like that. But we'll just very simply take the number of sessions, and I'm going to divide that by the number of leads that we have. And I'm going to guess that this doesn't have any real significant analytical interest here, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's an easy calculation to do in a demo. So now I basically have my other calculation. But what I want to do is I want to eliminate the original two measures from here. So we'll just very simply go ahead and hide those columns. And I'm going to hide my leads, and I'm going to hide my Google Analytics sessions. And I'll click OK, and it's going to tell me, hey, you can't do that because you need more than one measure. So we'll switch it back over to a bar chart. And so there's that calculation now. So basically, I've gone across two different data sources. I've done that calculation together. I didn't have to create a data warehouse. I didn't have to do anything really, really difficult. What's really great about working at Chartio, and I'm a pre-sales guy, so I'm used to, we have leads come in. And you guys know how the sales process works with software companies. We have leads come in. We do a demo for them. And in my past life, I would then spend 5 days, 12, 15 hours a day building stuff out and going, oh my God, I've got this demo on Friday. It's got to look easy, and I've got to kill myself doing this. I don't do that at Chartio. It's the best thing ever. What's awesome about Chartio is we have customers come in. They like what they see. We say, hey, we're going to hook you up on a trial. We'll call you in a couple of days. Let us know how it's going. We talk them through a couple of things. Call you in a couple of more days. And it's actually a pretty easy sales process, which ultimately says to me that the implementation of it's actually pretty dang easy too, right? Which is very cool, because we're not having to split atoms to make this thing work. It just sort of works the way it is, which is pretty slick. So once we've done this, again, I'm just going to save this back to my dashboard, and we'll put that out there. So I've got a dashboard out here. I can now share this out with my colleagues. At the moment, because I've created this dashboard myself and I haven't shared it with anybody yet, nobody really has access to it except for the owners of within our organization, Chartio. But I can then share it out. So this is one of these things that does get shared out with other people. When I first fired things up, you guys saw another dashboard, and I told you this is the dashboard that I created today. So I'll jump back over to that sales dashboard, and I actually have some more interesting dashboards as well that I can show. But we'll jump back over to that sales KPI dashboard. And so this is something that again, I built out. So you can see things like, hey, here's our current ARR as coming out of Salesforce. You can see sort of a spark line chart from that. The dollars upsold over the life of the company. The new ARR for the month. And then I just did things like, hey, here's our ARR by industry. Here's our sales reps, their total closed revenue, the number of accounts, their average sales price. And then I added a couple of other things in here as well. So you'll notice that there is a prompt over here. So if I click on this, I can choose a specific industry. I can choose multiple industries. I can search for them if I want to. Or I can just very simply come in here and click on those industries. And it's basically drilling down. It's basically filtering the page. So as I click on these industries, it's actually updating the entire page with what I've drilled down on. I've also got the ability, and we'll just go ahead and get rid of that. I've also got the ability to go into this timeline. And really what this is a slider. So I can just very simply say, well, how have we done just year to date? So we'll drag it over to January 2015, and again, it's updating everything. These are all queries that are being run against the database, and as I said, if you're using the Heroku Connect with it, that means you're getting very, very near real time about what's actually in Salesforce, which is very cool. So this isn't a day-old set of data. It's actually brand, fresh data, which always makes the sales VPs very happy. Is that true, Mr. Lemke? Like to see the fresh data? Our sales VP back there, Bob. I'm sure you all probably met Bob. And then again, we've also got, we've got a list of our sales reps' names, and I've gone ahead and hard-coded this so that I can actually drill over to another page, and so we can see the current opportunities for that specific sales rep. And if I'd like to, we can sort of back that out, and we can see the other individual, all of the other individuals as well, and all the other industry. We can filter an industry and things like that as well. And then there's a funnel chart. So I'm going to stop there. Again, there's a lot of other dashboards I can certainly show you, but any questions on what you've seen so far? Is this all making sense? Question right here?
Well, I guess I try to understand a little bit the specific of Chartio.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that one of the reasons that you use your technology is because it makes it easy to connect to multiple sources of data without having too much of a ETL process involved.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, cool. And it could be like any type of data, or do you have like areas that you're more specializing in, like such as like if you have features like for pictures or you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and this is always kind of the interesting question about business analytics, business intelligence in general.
Yeah.
It's tough to say we specialize in one specific thing. It's kind of a broad. The thing about it's almost like the Salesforce platform, right? It's one of those things where it's a platform that you can build a lot of different stuff, a lot of areas of analytics on. So it's not just one thing. There's a lot of different disciplines or sciences when it comes to business analytics. We kind of do the, and I don't want to make this sound anything bad, but we kind of do the meat and potatoes. We kind of do the heavy lifting of the majority of what people want to do with business analytics in terms of being able to just do some basic, hey, here's your data, here's the trends over time, let's filter around in that data. You've got your specialty, tools that go out there and do some really strong predictive analytics and things like that. That's not what we do. We kind of do the heavy lifting of the meat and potatoes of analytics.
Company operation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And not wanting to interject something else, but like, how do you guys position yourself with Tableau?
Tableau, great question. And I know I'm being recorded here, so I've got to be really careful because this will probably wind up on YouTube at some point. Tableau. So Tableau works really well for you've got certain users that are power users that absolutely love Tableau, and you kind of have to rip it out of their cold dead hands. And I understand it's really powerful. It's a really great tool. Then there's the other 98% of the company that can't figure Tableau out. And I actually hear this quite a bit. I remember the first time I worked with, I sort of played with Tableau a few years ago and realized how very cool it was and how very powerful it was, but also it's kind of immediately obvious to me that there was going to be a lot of business users that just couldn't really figure it out. And we hear that a lot when we talk to customers that are, hey, we've got Tableau in-house, we've got 2 or 3 people that know how to use it, and then there's a whole bunch of business users that just need to do some basic analytics and they need to do some basic ad hoc queries and build out their own dashboards and things like that, and that's exactly where we fit. So we're happy to take the other 98% of the business users. So
basically what you're saying is that it seems that you're making it easy for business users to do some basic business analytics.
yeah, I'd say so. It's it's easy for them to use, and then the time to value is extremely fast.
Okay.
So it's amazing to me to watch the number of people that are able to get up on it very quickly and be able to produce analytics on it very quickly. It's extraordinarily intuitive. We've spent a great deal of time from an engineering perspective, and from a design it's more of a design perspective of making this as easy as possible for end users, for business users to use.
However, may I?
Please do.
However, very important to understand that it's not just business users. The people who love Tableau, that are the Tableau power users, data analysts, data scientists, also love Chartio.
That is true.
So don't think it's, just for business users. It's for everyone. So I just wanted to make that delineation. Sorry.
No, that's a great
A lot
point.
of talk, but I couldn't help myself.
That's a great point. And in fact, I'll actually jump over. One thing I didn't get into showing was, you'll notice that we've got some SQL under here that gets generated as I'm doing this. You can actually, and I'm in our interactive mode right now, you can actually jump over into our SQL mode and type your own SQL if you want to do it as well. So we do have plenty of power users that will actually jump in and do their own SQL if they want to do it as well. So we definitely have power users that love us. And certainly we do hear from Tableau users, Tableau power users, that they love getting into it and using it as well. So, yeah. Thank you. And certainly don't want to sell us short, but at the same time, recognizing Tableau is, they certainly have set a high standard for what they do. The other thing about it is that, hey, everything we do is completely in the cloud. It's completely in your web browser. There's nothing to install. There's literally nothing to install, which makes my life very, very easy. And it just sort of works. I can generally have people up and running in about 5 minutes. And the database is available to us. So,
Thanks.
So, do you store data on the cloud, and can you store history, or it's just real time, just like Salesforce? Because one of the limitations of Salesforce is you cannot store history, and that's why you cannot do historical analysis and understand your behavior over time. So, do you guys have any?
it's a great question. So we do have a concept of data stores, and data stores are essentially allowing us to sort of save aggregate views in our cloud if you want to do that. And we have customers that will have something like, let's say Redshift, where they'll have literally 50 billion rows of event data, and they'll want to aggregate that and actually store that with us because things run faster. When it comes to doing historical data, because we are putting it in the case of us using Heroku Connect, that data is going into a Postgres database. So we don't necessarily do anything to save history, but you could very easily write a script that would go out there, let's say, on a nightly basis. So first of all, you do have the opportunity history object that can get stored. But if you want to just literally do a copy of, let's say, the opportunity object, you could write a script that would basically just do a daily copy of that and just append, what the snapshot date of that copy that you're making. So we don't do it personally, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. It's a pretty trivial thing to be able to do. Not in Salesforce, obviously, but once you have it into a database, it's a pretty trivial thing just to do sort of a select insert or whatever into a table like that. Any other questions? Good questions, by the way. All right.
Just in terms of those, sorry.
Yeah.
In terms of users, industries, departments, or people that is really leveraging this, can you tell a little bit about who is leveraging this the most? And is there any way to integrate, this may sound trivial, but like bullet points or what's the data saying rather than just showing the data, the different sources?
So what's the data saying? So adding things out there like being able to add like text and things like that. Yeah, you can certainly, there's the ability to add text objects out there that allow you to do that as well. So yeah, you can do that sort of thing. So it's not sort of figuring that out for you. You've got to actually do the analytics on that, but you can certainly add that into that and send that out to like a PDF file or something like that. Email that out if you want to.
But is it like a particular industries that, or is just completely different, all kinds of verticals, all kinds of
Across the board, what would we say to, is there anybody specific industry-wise? I mean, we certainly have a lot of companies here in San Francisco. We've got a lot of companies that, like in New York on the East Coast, that use us as well. I don't even know what the percentage is, but we're shockingly at this point really international. We've actually got quite an international presence, which was a big surprise for me coming here. I don't know if there's anything specific. Certainly we do have a lot of tech companies, but once you get outside of the tech space here in the Bay Area, it's kind of all over the place. Yeah, so it's nothing specific.
What's your licensing cost per month?
It's free for me.
It's free for you. That's pretty good.
I would have to let you talk to the guys that are actually in sales to be able to tell you that. It's north of a couple of dollars. That's all I know.
So it's not, you had mentioned this is not really a predictive modeling tool, although it seems that, one thing that impressed me was your ability to forecast.
The extrapolation piece, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this is not a predictive modeling technique, or it does functionality?
It's that when I said that it does some good basic predictive type stuff. So you can do sort of that linear prediction. I think we do cubic, and there's one other in there as well. What I meant by that was we're not, if you know what SAS is, we're not SAS where you get into like extreme hardcore predictive analytics. Yeah. So it's more of sort of the easy stuff. Hey, let's do some. Hey, where's the business going based on the trajectory we already have? So that's what I meant by that. Yeah. I undersold us. We do definitely have some predictive analytics in us, but I wouldn't say that we're SAS. So if that makes sense. And SAS would say they're not Chartio.
But because they can't do pretty pictures?
Because they cannot do what we can do as fast as we can do it.
Okay.
So, yeah. Because their consultants charge $500 an hour, and they couldn't.
And yours charge?
We don't. We actually don't have we didn't have a services group. It's easy enough that we don't have, at this point, we don't even have a consulting arm. So we have a customer success team, and they jump in and help our customers as we go. But so far, we really haven't had a need for a services firm or a services arm, which is great. So.
Is there a way to run the same dashboard with different personas or roles or profiles? Because I want to build a dashboard once.
Yep. And you want to be able to.
All the different levels use same information, but based on their level.
Yeah, so what you can do with that is you can put prompting in here that would allow you to do that, and they'd be able to choose sort of what they want to be able to see. You can also actually embed it, let's say like in a Salesforce. I haven't actually personally embedded it in Salesforce yet, but I believe that can be done. And then you can pass in who that person is, and it would pick up what their persona is based on some of the data in there. That would take a little bit of work because you'd have to sort of work out all of the security and how the personas would work with it. Yeah, it's doable. It's doable. That would take a little bit of work. But yeah, it's doable.
So, and by a little, it is a little.
Sure, I'm in sales, so of course it's just a little.
I mean, no, it's a serious answer because, if anyone here is familiar with traditional BI, a little work to traditional BI is weeks, months. When we talk a little, we're talking days / maybe weeks. Weeks is a lot. So you have to kind of change your paradigm. So when he says a little, to us it is a little. It's not traditional BI a little meaning 3, 4, and 5 months. So
One admin makes changes for hundreds of users.
yeah, we would prefer 1,000. Instead of sales. So.
Any other questions?
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks you guys.